All right, let's take a break on hoops. No more basketball talk. That Pitt-Duke game, still trying to wash the taste away from that one. Jeff Capel said after the game that he doesn't burn the tape. He doesn't believe in that, but maybe you should make an exception. That might be a good one to burn the tape on. But we're going to take a break from the basketball talk for now. I'm sure we'll get back into it in the mailbag tomorrow, or obviously next week heading into the Syracuse game on Tuesday night. But for now, let's turn our focus over to the transfer portal. Let's have a portal podcast right here, talk about who Pitt got, how they fit in, what they might still need, where they missed out, and some holes that they might still have to fill with transfers either now or after the spring. It's all right here on the Morning Pitt, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Yeah, what day is this? Thursday. It's Thursday on the Morning Pitt on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. The days run together and they get all blurry for me, but it's all right because we are here to talk to you about Pitt sports. You know the deal. You know what we always ask you to do. youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com is our YouTube channel. Like this video and subscribe so you never miss any of our Pitt video content, these daily Morning Pitt videos, our weekly live stream that we do every Wednesday night. We did it last night at 8 o'clock. Me and Jim Hammock get together and hang out with you and take your comments and questions and have a conversation. Our live shows, our live post-game shows, I should say, that we do we're going to do after all the road games from here on out for basketball. We won't do them after home games, but we'll do them after road games. We'll go live and take your comments and questions and interact, have a little back and forth like a call-in show, like an old school call-in show, just without any phones or your voice, just me reading your comments and questions, and then reacting to them, answering your questions, responding to your comments. We do it right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, so make sure you like this video and subscribe, and that way you won't miss any of it. And then the website, of course, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com is a place for all the Pitt sports coverage that you need. Football, basketball, recruiting, you find it all at Panther-Lair.com, and message boards to interact with hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans all day, every day. Pitt fans are hanging out on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com. And Pitt fans are doing cool things all over the place. Pitt fans are starting businesses, titans of industry, helping people, doing a lot. And one Pitt fan, a good friend of ours, started Backshore apparel. And you see I've got my Backshore hat on today. This is the Hail hat. That's what this one is called on the site. They got a lot of hats. The Journey one is really cool. But I got the Hail one on. And Backshore, it's a special technology of hats. I mean, your hat's not going to make a phone call or something like that, but it's a hat that's made it's buoyant, it's breathable, it's durable, it's quick dry, it's lightweight, it's wicking. A lot of the stuff they have at Backshore is sort of beach themed, and it's good for the beach. And obviously, you're not thinking about that right now when it's like 30 degrees in Pittsburgh and the crap weather that we've had over the past few days. But I'll tell you, the hat puts me in mind of the beach and makes me feel a lot better about the weather we're getting right now. And I mean, hats are all season, right? I mean, you don't need to be at the beach to wear a good hat like this, to wear a high quality beach tech hat like Backshore. They've got some other stuff, some shirts and things that you probably want to check out, and they'll be good for that trip to the Outer Banks that you're making this summer. But this hat you could wear any time of year. It's just that high quality. It's a great hat. It's really well put together, and the beach tech is outstanding. And they've had some great support from Pitt fans and just everyone who's interested in Backshore. They're thrilled by the overwhelming support that they've gotten, and as a result, they're extending the holiday promo that they offer to Pitt fans before the holidays. The promo code is Holiday10. You use that, you're going to get 10% off your order at backshoreapparel.com. Holiday10, one word, no spaces or anything like that. You use that promo code, Pitt fans specifically. If you guys use this promo code, you're going to get 10% off your order. It's a great hat. It's a great product. The Journey hat is in stock. I mean, I really like the Hail hat. I love the color on this thing, the yellow accents on just such a nice color of blue. But the Journey hat that just came back in is very summery. It's going to be putting you in mind of the beach, and I recommend it for that reason alone, just to make you feel a little bit better about where we're at right now with the weather that we're experiencing. But go check out backshoreapparel.com. I think you're going to find something that you like, and you can get it for 10% off with the promo code Holiday10. So go do that. And thanks to Mike, and thanks to Backshore for sponsoring the podcast and supporting us as always. Let's talk transfer portal. All right, Pitt's got 12 players they're adding from the transfer portal scholarship players, and we're going to make that distinction because I think there's at least one walk-on who's transferring, a walk-on long snapper. But they have what I think is a scholarship long snapper, Nile, and I still haven't gotten his last name down, so I don't want to butcher it. But he's coming in from Connecticut. He'll fill that space that was left by Byron Floyd. When Floyd decided to go into the transfer portal, he ended up at Buffalo. But that's just one of the 12. And I think it was a need. I mean, they needed another long snapper. If they didn't feel like they had a good option on the bench right now, they needed another long snapper. So I guess that I guess that makes sense, but I don't know if I went into the portal thinking that was the most pressing need for the Pitt staff. Certainly among the needs that we talked about heading into the offseason, cornerback was a big one, defensive line was a big one, possibly wide receiver, maybe quarterback, depending on what they thought they needed. We'll talk about all those positions, but it really started with cornerback, and I'm a little surprised that they've only taken one transfer corner so far. Tamon Lynam from Nebraska transferring in after playing spot duty, probably projected to be a starter for the Cornhuskers in 2024, decided to go into the transfer portal and should be a starter for Pitt in 2024. If he's not, I think that speaks well of Noah Bigelow and Rylan Gandy and Tamarian Crumpley and Rashad Battle and Shadarian Harrison and all those guys that they've got returning on this roster. But the reality is they lost 3 starters. They lost A.J. Woods, Marquez Williams, and M.J. Devonshire after the 2023 season. Woods and Williams out of eligibility, Devonshire deciding to go to the NFL. And so they needed to bring in a veteran player. And they have some older players, but not necessarily experienced veteran players, even at the level that Lynam is. And so Tamon Lynam comes in and will be a good piece, I think, to help in the secondary. Ultimately, you'd like to see some of those young corners and safeties step up, and I think they will, but Lynam really helps fill out the room. I actually thought they might try to get 2 corners. My interest and curiosity and belief in the young corners has me thinking it's okay that they only got 1. At wide receiver, they've taken 2 players so far, and I actually am going to kind of lump this in with the running back too, because they've taken 1 running back and 2 wide receivers out of the transfer portal to this point. Wide receivers Sincere Lee from Western Carolina and Raphael Williams from San Diego State, and the running back Desmond Reed from Western Carolina. And ultimately, they all have origin points. They all have Western Carolina as an origin point. Raphael Williams transferring to Pitt from San Diego State, but he transferred to San Diego State from Western Carolina. You can see what the connective tissue is here. It's Cade Bell, the new offensive coordinator, who obviously worked with Lee and Reed this past season and worked with Williams 2 years ago, and even before that, because he was at Tusculum. I still haven't figured out how to pronounce that, and I shouldn't have to say it too much beyond this point, but he played for Bell there as well, and actually that transfer to Western Carolina counted as his first transfer. So when he transferred to San Diego State last offseason, he did so knowing that he wouldn't be eligible to play because it's his second transfer. Somehow or another, he will be able to play. He's expected to be able to play at Pitt this upcoming season. And I think when you look at Williams, you look at what he did at Western Carolina, and before that, some of the film that sort of emerged, either practice film or game film, he looks like a really promising player. Looks like he's got good speed. He's got good ball skills. He looks like a good wide receiver. And certainly Sincere Lee and Desmond Reed were very productive at Western Carolina this past season, and they've got a familiarity and what should be a fit in the offense. Certainly Cade Bell would think they have a fit in the offense because he brought them with him. My concern is this. They're all not big. I don't think Desmond Reed is very big. I don't think Sincere Lee is very big. I think Raphael Williams is a little bit bigger, but not anything close to what you would call a big wide receiver. And that's not the end of the world. Smaller receivers, smaller running backs can make plays. Speed is number one, right? I mean, if you have speed, that can make up for a lack of size. But I don't know, I think Lee, Reed, and Williams add speed to Pitt's skill rooms. They add speed to Reed adds speed to the running back room. Lee and Williams add more speed to the wide receiver room. but I'm not sure if they fill some of the other needs that Pitt had, namely size. I mean, they still don't really have a big receiver on this team. I mean, guys like Kenny Johnson, Lamar Seymour are decent size. Dejon Reynolds, decent size, but not what you would consider like, oh, that's a big receiver. They're like average receivers in college football in terms of height. You know what I mean? I'm not talking about ability, but in terms of height, they're sort of average receivers. And I don't think Lee and Williams are as big as those guys are. So it sort of feels like I don't know if they plugged holes with these guys that they're bringing in, with these skill position transfers. And they're all coming basically from the FCS level. You know, I know that I know that Williams is coming from San Diego State, but he didn't play there, and he transferred from Western Carolina to begin with. And that's not to say that guys from the FCS level can't play and can't contribute. Rather, it's to say that, no, I don't even want to say it that way. FCS players can contribute. FCS players can play well. They can make an impact at the FBS level, at the Power 5 level. We've seen it. There are plenty of examples of FCS transfers going into a Power 5 school and having a great year. It's not unheard of, but it's also not the majority. You know, you also don't get that happening 9 times out of 10, 3 times out of 4, 2 times out of 3. And you're asking all 3 of these guys, Lee, Reed, and Williams, to do things they've never done before, which is play at the Power 5 level and excel at the Power 5 level. And I'm not saying they're not capable of doing so. I just think when you play the odds here, they feel like lottery tickets more than players who sort of fill out the wide receiver rotation and fill out the running back rotation. I think you take these guys hoping their upside can come through and their speed can help them make plays, but ultimately still seemingly relying on Rodney Hammond and Kenny Johnson and Konate Mumfield and Dejon Reynolds to sort of lead the charge at running back and wide receiver. And it sort of feels to me like, well, if you get great contribution out of Lee, Reed, and Reynolds, or Williams, oh, that's good, but who knows if you will or not. And everything's up in the air with everybody. You never know who's going to translate and who's not. I mean, we've seen transfers from other Power 5 schools translate and some guys not. It's not there are no guarantees. And you certainly don't want to dismiss the possibility, but I don't know if they wanted to add a big wide receiver to sort of, you know, step in as the number 1. I'm not sure they got that with Williams or Lee. And that doesn't mean they didn't get playmakers, but I'm not sure they got what I assume they were looking for. Because if you look at the group of Konate Mumfield, Dejon Reynolds, Kenny Johnson, even the other freshmen who redshirted, Lamar Seymour and Zion Fowler-El and Izzy Polk, I mean, I think there's good players. I think there's good players in those among those guys, and I think they're going to play well. But I don't know if there's that number 1 wide receiver. Certainly not the guy with size. You know, I think Kenny Johnson's, again, decent size, average size for a Power 5 wide receiver, but not that bigger target. So if that's what they were looking for, I'm not sure they got it. Moving on through the offense, the tight end, Jake Overman, I think seems like he could figure as a good number 2 or maybe number 3 tight end, depending on the types of packages you want to put out there. On the offensive line, they landed Lyndon Cooper, the transfer from NC State, and this sort of feels like a position where they wanted more but didn't get it. I don't know what the target number was for offensive line in the transfer portal, but I think it was more than 1, and I'm not sure that Cooper was their top target for either of the, say, maybe 2 spots they wanted to get. They had 3 offensive linemen visit last week. Demetrius Witherspoon, actually from Howard, but originally from Clairton. Derek Graham and Xavier Bosley. Bosley coming from Jacksonville State, and I'm drawing a blank on Graham's place of origin, Troy. So all like coming from a lower level, but considering a lot of Power 5 offers. I mean, Derek Graham from Troy was looking at Pitt, Texas A&M, Ohio State, and I think Missouri. Bosley, I think, was looking at Pitt, West Virginia, and Kentucky. Witherspoon looking at Pitt, Syracuse. I'm not sure what else he really had on his plate, but I mean, they were all coming from the lower level, the 1AA level, and moving to or the group of 5 level, I guess, for some of these guys, and moving into the Power 5. And they missed on all 3 of them. Weatherspoon, the offensive lineman originally from Clairton, who went to Howard, committed to Syracuse the day before he visited Pitt, and he still came on his Pitt visit and ended up coming out of it still committed to Syracuse. Decided to stick with the Orange, so he'll be playing at Syracuse this year. Pitt will see him this season. Derek Graham from Troy ended up committing to Texas A&M, and Xavier Bosley from Jacksonville State ended up committing to West Virginia. And I think all 3 of those guys, or at least 1 or 2, or maybe all 3, were priority targets for the Pitt staff and the people trying to assemble talent for Pitt out of the transfer portal this offseason. And to miss on all 3 sort of feels like they left something on the table. Now, I don't know if I necessarily went into the offseason saying, oh man, Pitt's got to get like 4 offensive linemen or 3 offensive linemen out of the portal. They got to get this and they got to get that. I think there's potential in the group that Pitt has. Obviously, people making personnel decisions at Pitt feel like they need to upgrade for at least a couple of the spots. And in that regard, it seems like they sort of fell short. If Weatherspoon, Graham, and Bosley were the guys that they were really going after, or among the guys they were really going after, they fell short. They missed on those guys. You flip over to defense, they got the 2 defensive ends, David Ojebwe, the young redshirt freshman from Clemson, and Nate Matlack, the redshirt senior from Kansas State. 2 guys on the opposite ends of the spectrum. Ojebwe is all potential, all pedigree, all, highly rated recruit with a lot of offers, but he never played at Clemson as a true freshman before he went into the portal. Matlack, on the other end, is a guy who I don't think was all that highly recruited coming out of high school, but ended up becoming a really solid player at Kansas State, working in a 3-man front, those unbalanced lines up front, or odd-man fronts, I should say, where defensive ends and rush ends don't necessarily get a chance to show what they're really capable of, because their responsibilities and duties are different when they're playing with a 3-man line as opposed to playing in a 4-man line, and Matlack wants that opportunity to play as a 4-man line. Pitt needed transfer defensive ends last year, and after losing Sam Okunlola to the portal, they need more help this year, and I think they brought that in with the veteran player who's been around a lot and the young player who's full of promise and upside. And then sort of the same thing at defensive tackle. And actually, defensive tackle was a spot, particularly after DeAndre Jules left, where I thought Pitt probably would have wanted to get multiple transfers in, and they end up, so far, they just have Nick James, a transfer from Indiana, another former 4-star recruit coming in to play D-tackle, and I would assume coming in to be a starter, or at worst a 2-deep rotational player, seeing a lot of snaps. And you know how Charlie Partridge likes to rotate the linemen up front. That's the role he's going to step into, and a role he's going to be a part of. Played some at Indiana. I think it's still very much up in the air about what he's going to be able to do. But with James and with David Ojebwe, I think you see 2 guys who, again, good pedigree, good offer sheets, high potential, high upside. They're the kind of guys that's a good kind of guy to bring in. The guy who's got natural talent, but maybe hasn't gotten a chance to showcase it yet. You bring him in and you help him develop and give him a role and let him kind of blossom, ideally. And then the linebacker, they got Key Thompson from Ohio, just a tackling machine over the last couple of years. Can play middle linebacker, can play money linebacker. Probably he'll step into one of those 2 spots, either as a starter or a reserve, but I think he'll be in the heavy rotation. If you get a Tyler Wiltz type of contribution out of him, I think everybody would be happy with that. It doesn't necessarily have to be Kylan Johnson coming into a starting role and playing really well all season like Johnson did in 2019 after transferring from Florida. But I think you're looking for Key Thompson to come in to be an experienced player, a versatile player, a knowledgeable player, and somebody who can, really fill out the rotation at linebacker. And then the most recent addition, of course, and I said we were done with offense, but as you know, you probably were like, wait, you forgot a big one on offense, and I did. It was Eli. Well, I didn't forget. I was just sort of saving it for last. Eli Holstein, the former 4-star recruit coming in from Alabama. We talked about him a lot on Monday in the wake of his commitment. We had the article, the interview with him and his dad on Panther-Lair.com. You can go check that out. And like I said on Monday, and what I'll continue to say, is I think Holstein comes in to compete. Comes in to compete with Nate Yarnell, comes in to compete with Christian Veyer, and comes in to compete with Ty Diefenbach and Julian Duggar. to find his place in that pecking order. And maybe it's beating out Yarnell for the number 1 spot. Maybe it's beating out Vare for the number 2 spot. Maybe it's beating out, Duggar and Diefenbach to stay off the scout team. Yeah, like wherever it is, Eli Holstein's coming in for that chance to compete. And I'm not going to sit here. I'm not anointing him the starter. I don't know that he was necessarily brought in specifically to be the starter in 2024. I think he was brought in to learn the offense and develop and compete and see where that leads. Yes, Keaton Slovis was brought in to be the starter 2 years ago. Yes, Phil Dracovic was brought in to be the starter 2 years ago. And whether those jobs were promised or whatever you want to call it, that was the intention. That was why they were brought in. That was what the coaches were going for when they recruited Keaton Slovis and Phil Dracovic. I think with Eli Holstein, sure, if he wins the starting job, great. But that's not entirely the intention. I think the intention is to bring him in, get him into the system, get him into the program, get him into the offense, and see what happens when he competes in the spring and the summer. And you can't hate the physical attributes. There's just like I always say about Julian Duggar, you can't hate the physical tools. I was just watching some video I took of Duggar from a prospect camp over the summer. And, I mean, the ball just flies. And it's the same thing with Holstein. The ball goes. I mean, it's a huge arm. And, so you take somebody who might need to be molded a little bit, might need to be coached and developed, but has those tools to begin with. And I think that's a good way to fill out your quarterback depth. And we talked before about, quarterbacks. If you're a school like Pitt, do you even recruit high school quarterbacks very often? Or is it better to look for the, redshirt freshman, redshirt sophomore who's in the transfer portal, who's got some experience being part of a college football program, and you bring him in to be, part of your quarterback room for the foreseeable future. So overall, when I look at the transfer portal and the 12 players Pitt has gotten, I think they address some needs at cornerback, defensive end, and to some extent defensive tackle. I don't think they got what they were hoping to get with the offensive line. I think they filled out the rotation nicely at linebacker and added a good piece at corner. And then, what could be a league-winning move by adding a big, talented quarterback in Eli Holstein that, may pay off, may not, may pay off right now in 2024, and may not pay off for a couple of years. We'll see how that works out. But overall, I think they did pretty well, particularly if you compare it against what they lost and who they lost, and to the transfer portal from the roster, from the 2023 roster, the guys that were potential to come back. But I think overall, they did pretty well. There was probably a spot or two where they could have done a little bit better, a player or two or a position or two where they would have liked to have upgraded and weren't able to do so. But I think overall, I think they did a pretty good job of getting what they needed out of the portal, and they'll probably get a few more. I don't know if they'll get them before spring camp or not, but certainly after the spring, when some more players go into the portal, I think they'll probably get a few more. And you can always go and get a few more really nice hats. There's some great beach tech. And again, I know it's cold outside, but a good hat knows no seasons. Backshore apparel.com is the place to go. Promo code HOLIDAY10 to get 10% off your order. And then check out the website Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com to get all of your Pitt sports news. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We've got the mailbag tomorrow. So if you haven't gotten a question in yet on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com, go do that. And we'll answer as many as we can in the mailbag tomorrow. Thanks for watching the video today. Hope you've had a great week so far. Enjoy your Thursday. We'll be back with you tomorrow morning for the Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.